Oh, hey, and welcome to the start of another reading vlog. So I figured it would be fun to dedicate an entire vlog to books with rich people murder vibes. Am I right? I mean, sometimes we're just in the mood for that, you know? And a lot of these books that I have planned for this vlog, I feel like are going to be super fun. And so whenever I'm in the mood for something like that that is just fun and entertaining and a bit over the top and just delves into the world of rich people, sometimes I'm in the mood for that. And I want to start with something that I actually read a while ago. I wanted to briefly mention it in case it's something, it fits the theme. It didn't quite work for me, but I wanted to just briefly mention it in case it's something that might work for you. So this is Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. We follow our main character and go through a lot of his history and how, you know, kind of what led up to some of these moments, but ultimately our main character works for someone who is really rich as kind of their right-hand person, and you know, that person is part of a very rich family that has a bunch of business connections in a bunch of different sectors and kinds of industries across the city. I believe this is New Delhi, right? Yeah, New Delhi. And so you're going back a little bit in time to look at his childhood and things like that and everything that he's been through, him working for this rich family, how they interrelate to some other rich families in this city, and certain dealings and things that are happening across the city that are connected to their companies. And, you know, he's ultimately, you know, picked to be the right-hand person for one of the people in this rich family, and is so the beginning of the story opens with a car accident and some people dying in a car accident, kind of off, like the car, you know, going into a sidewalk and killing some people. So that's the opening of it, and our main character is driving, or in the driver's seat of the car, is driving the car. And so, you know, goes to jail, so part of it takes place in jail, and it's the mystery of, or the dealings of, these different families and the people that they've met along the way, or the people our main character has met along the way, and how that kind of fits into the picture of what ultimately led to that moment. And this one was just a bit slower than what I wanted. It really goes a lot into, it's definitely, I think, more of a character work than plot heavy, and at the time I wanted something plot heavy, and so I think it was just kind of a divergence of expectation and reality, I think, was why this one didn't quite work for me, not necessarily the book itself. I think the narrator also was a really good narrator. You know, it just wasn't the vibe that I wanted at the time. It really goes a lot into the history of these different characters, their relationships, how they're feeling, conversations that they're having, realizations that they're coming to, and how they're trying to deal with those. And I just wanted something a little more plot forward. But I wanted to just mention that just in case. I also did recently read something on a vacation. I was in Colorado on a ski trip and read this one on Kindle, in part during the vacation and then also on the way back home. And that is The Family Game. And I'll put an image here because I'm blanking on the author's name. But this one was super fun. This one follows our main character who is getting engaged, or is engaged to this man who comes from a very wealthy family. She has never met any of them. And from the stories that he's told, she's very nervous to meet a lot of them, or any of them. And she's a writer, and she's also trying to work through her next book and meet some deadlines, but is struggling with that a bit. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And you know, she, after getting engaged, is like, okay, I really do need to kind of accept invitations and coordinating meeting some of your family members. And so, you know, she starts by meeting one family member and then goes to various family events and she just starts to get a really off vibe. And this family really likes to just play games and mess with people. And so part of it is her figuring out how to navigate these games. And and so she's trying to fit into this family because she wants to ultimately get along with her fiance's family. And they also, you know, in some sense, she feels like they really want to accept her too, because they want to really bring their son back into their lives. And they've kind of been, you know, they've kind of been drawn apart by just various things that have happened over the years. And she finds out that there was a death in the family some time ago and starts to uncover more details about that and how that relates to some other things that are going on. And ultimately, this one was just fun. This one was just super entertaining. I like thrillers that involve family secrets, but also some closed door elements. I mean, this one isn't fully closed door in a sense that they're trapped in different places, but there are certain situations and quite a few times where she feels trapped with this family because she needs to navigate some different things. She also has secrets of her own from her past that she thinks no one else will know. But, you know, those come into play into making her feel stuck and enclosed in certain situations, or kind of forced to stay in certain situations because she doesn't want those secrets to get out. And the ramifications of what would happen if they did also come into play. And so she's trying to navigate a lot, but I really like thrillers where it's a group of people who have different secrets and they're kind of forced together in a place and need to navigate those secrets in order to survive. And that's kind of what this was, in a sense, in a slightly different way. But and it was fun to learn about this family and how, I mean, she's pretty well off herself, a pretty successful author, but, you know, it does not come from money compared to her fiance and his family. So it was kind of fun to learn about their family and just the things that they do because they can, and the money they spend because they can, that just kind of shocks her. Anyway, I had a really great time with this one. So yeah, didn't mean to read 2 books for this vlog before actually starting it, but you know, it's fine. There's some more that I really would love to read that involve, you know, rich families, inheritances, potential, you know, people getting hurt kind of storylines. And so I'm excited to read some more of those. And when I read the next one, I will check in, and we're not going to go through 2 more books that, you know, for this vlog before I check in again. But anyway. So I've read another book for this vlog. It wasn't actually one that I intended for this vlog. I didn't quite realize that this dealt with super rich families. The synopsis does make reference to a lavish wedding, so that should have tipped me off, but I didn't quite realize how central being wealthy was to this story, and it does involve murder and weddings. So I'm talking about You're Invited by Amanda Giatisa. This one I had a lot of fun with, and in this one you're following Amaya. 5 years before our story starts, she had a falling out with her best friend. It was super intense. She basically promised never to see or speak to that family again. 5 years later, she finds out that her former best friend is getting married to an ex-boyfriend of hers, and she's determined to stop the wedding. And she has a few ways that she's planning on potentially doing this, kind of increasing in intensity. You learn about those throughout the story. It's relatively slow start, but I think does pick up, especially towards the middle. Anyway, so you're following Amaya, as she goes back to Sri Lanka, to Colombo for this wedding, you're learning more about her family and her family's history, her best friend's family, and what's going on with them and how they interrelate. And the family is surprised that Amanda was invited. That Amanda, that's the author's name, not the characters. That Amaya was invited to the wedding, but she just continues to press forward and go to events for this wedding. It's a long set of ceremonies and celebrations and stuff. It was really cool to learn more about Sri Lankan weddings, so that was a fun aspect to this. And so she's going through the week of the wedding, going through these activities and trying to execute her plan to break up this wedding. And you follow a few threads, and I think it was pretty cool to follow these different threads, and the way they were woven together I think was pretty fun. So you're following a few months before the wedding, kind of the lead up to the wedding, the engagement, and some things surrounding that. You're also following the week of the wedding and things that are going on there. And you're also following some interview transcripts from an investigator who is asking questions after Amaya has gone, not Amaya, Amaya's friend that's getting married. She has gone missing and is presumed dead or at least severely hurt. And one of the key suspects is Amaya, just based on their history and some things that are going on. And anyway, so you learn some more information about these families through these interview transcripts, which was a pretty cool method, a cool storytelling technique that I think, as I said, was done interestingly here. And I really appreciated kind of going to these different points in time, and I think it was just laid out pretty well. And I just had a lot of fun following this family, following the twists and turns of the new information. Not a lot of it was surprising necessarily. I think I picked up on where this was ultimately, or at least some key aspects of where this was ultimately going, but still had a fun time along the way. Would highly recommend the audiobook. I mentioned I've read this super quickly once I started reading the audiobook because finding time to physically read is hard. But yeah, the audiobook was really great. It was narrated by a few different narrators. Anyway, I would recommend the audiobook. So yeah, I do have a few more, or at least a couple more that I would love to read for this vlog. So more to come. Again, hopefully I will check in as I'm reading something for, one of these vlogs, one of these days. We'll see. So I've read another book for this vlog. Technically, it's not rich people murder vibes specifically, but it is a classic in the rich people vibes area. So I wanted to talk about it here, and that is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. And this one was just fun. I just had a good time with it. I was in the mood for something like this, and so I just went for it and had a good time. And in this one, you follow Rachel. Actually, you follow kind of a cast of characters, but I would consider Nick and Rachel kind of the main characters. And Rachel and Nick have been dating for a while. They're starting to get serious, and Nick invites Rachel back home for the summer to Singapore to meet his family, which seems relatively normal in the course of a relationship, but Nick has been pretty tight-lipped about his family. She hasn't really met any of his family. He hasn't really talked about them too much, and she doesn't really quite understand how rich his family is. And so when she goes over to Singapore, she's starting to meet some of his friends. Some of his friends are really nice and welcoming to her. Some of them are not. And same with his family. And ultimately, it's a test of whether his family is really going to accept her as someone who's not from the kind of family they want for Nick to marry into. And so, she's just kind of has a little bit of culture shock as she is meeting some of his friends. There's a wedding for one of Nick's closest friends that's kind of the focal point for their reason for going back to Singapore, but he's also spending some more time there as well while they've made their way all the way to Singapore from New York. And so, they're both professors in New York City, and they live a bit of a quieter life than what his wealth might suggest. So she really doesn't have a sense, based on the way he lives in New York, how rich he is either. Anyway, it was just fun. It was, if you just want to follow a rich family and a rich group of people judging and gossiping about each other, and you just want it for the vibes, would recommend. The writing doesn't necessarily, I guess I'll just say the writing is relatively simplistic. You don't really go too in depth with any of the characters. It's kind of just this happened, then this happened, then this person said this, and this person responded in this way, and oh my goodness, this happened. And it's a very simple, easy to get into, but very simple writing style that doesn't really allow for, or didn't really give in-depth character work, I'll say. So the characters kind of feel like just generic rich people for the most part, but it was just fun. It was fun. There's I think at least one more I would love to read for this vlog, but we'll see. Hopefully we'll read that one before too long and then wrap this vlog up. This one includes more books than I usually include for a vlog, but I've been really wanting to kind of do this theme for a vlog, and so we'll squeeze one, maybe two more in, and then wrap this one up. So I have picked up another book for this vlog. This is one of the ones that I had in mind. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna try to. Okay, hopefully I can keep that angle and avoid the glare. This is one of the ones that I had in mind when I had this video idea to kind of group rich people murder vibes into a vlog. This is one of the ones that I've been interested in for quite a while. The library that I used to have access to had the audiobook of this. The new library system that I'm in does not, unfortunately, but I did get a physical copy, and it's not unscripted. I could use an Audible credit, but I decided to just go with the physical copy, which is something that I've done very rarely this year because I have relied on audiobooks to be able to get through my list and actually be able to read. I really rely on audiobooks right now. But I have decided to pick this one up physically, and it's just one I've been interested in for a long time. So this is Good Rich People by Eliza Jane Brazier, and in this, I've just started it. I'm how many pages in? I'm only 60 pages in, and you follow the person that we've been introduced to so far is the wife in a couple that the husband and his mom kind of have this game where they'll rent out the guest space in their house and just completely ruin the life of whoever lives there. And this is purely because they just want entertainment. They're rich, they're bored, and nothing entertains them except like ruining people's lives. And she has not really been accepted by her husband's mother. They have a pretty toxic relationship, and she really just is in the relationship kind of for the security of the money and just the lifestyle and not needing to work, and like that's why she went into the marriage. And there's not really love there between them, but she accepts him and accepts this game that he plays and that her mother-in-law plays. And she doesn't get involved, but also doesn't really interfere or say anything and kind of lets them do their thing. But now that game isn't enough, and the entertainment that they want this time is to watch her control the next game, and she has no desire to. Like, she has no desire to get involved with any of this, but she kind of gets roped into, and just, you know, she just kind of doesn't really feel she has any other option but to kind of go along with it. So we've kind of been introduced to her scenario, and the person who's next going to be renting the guest space has moved in. It's someone who also actually has a fair amount of, like, makes a good amount of money and isn't the typical type of person who has stayed at this guest space. And so she's kind of intrigued, and the person who's renting it out is someone who actually has come from a really rough childhood and has kind of fought tooth and nail to get where she is and to be able to find some financial security for herself. That's really all we know so far about this person. But again, I'm only 60 pages in. But look at me actually checking in as I'm in the middle of a book instead of after I've completed it. Who is she? Who is she? Anyway, so I will hopefully be able to check in more as I'm reading it. I'm intrigued. I think the writing style has been super easy to get into. You know, the characters are deplorable, but I'm just intrigued, and I feel like I'm going to enjoy watching the shit show. You know what I mean? So I'll check in later. So here to wrap up this vlog, it has been a minute since I finished Good Rich People. But let me give you some final thoughts. Overall, super entertaining. If you're just in the mood for rich people murder vibes, would highly recommend. They're not perfect for me, so let me kind of describe why. So I think I talked about the basic setup, if I'm recalling what I was talking about in the previous clip that I filmed for this, so I won't go too much over that. But we're following our character, both characters, one who is the wife of kind of this family that has a game where they kind of mess with the people who are in the guest house, and so it's her turn, or I say turn, that she's kind of being forced to take a turn. Normally it's just the husband and the husband's mother, but they are wanting to kind of put her through the ringer. So she is now controlling this game where they mess with the person in the guest house, and you're also following the person in the guest house. And it did get, yeah, there were some things that kind of ramped up in some like crazy situations that were just fun to follow. It was, I kind of expected it to get even more wild than it did, and I kind of wanted it to get even more wild than it did. Like, if you're just gonna go balls to the walls, you know, mind fuckery with rich people, like, I wanted you to like go all the way, you know what I mean? And it didn't quite go as far as I wanted it to, and since we're following both perspectives, there were a few situations where there are these kind of mind games or just things that the wife is doing to the person who's in the guest house, but we go back and relive some of those things through the other person's perspective. And so part of that, like, it is kind of nice to see some things from their perspective and kind of see what they were doing at the time. Since you're following one of them, you know, there are stretches of time where you don't know what the other is doing in those moments to kind of lead up to some things that happen. So in that case, you are filling in some gaps about what the other person was doing, but it also did kind of make some things feel a bit repetitive for me, and because it's not clear sometimes that you're switching back and forth in time, it does take a moment for you to realize, oh, we're going back to where we're going back here, and then kind of going back over some events, but from the other person's perspective. So like, and I know it was an intentional choice to kind of fill in those gaps, but I think it spread out those events a little bit too much and made it such that it took a lot of page time to go over a few events that happened for the wife to mess with the guest house. the person who's living in the guest house. Is it Demi? Anyway, so, you know, if there had been a way to kind of maybe make that a little bit tighter, then maybe we could have had a few more events happen and kind of really ramp up what was going on even just a notch higher and just make it wild. And it was like, there, you know, it got kind of wild, but anyway, I don't know, but it was entertaining. It was super entertaining. I did want to keep reading to find out what was happening next. I really liked the writing. I think the writing style overall was super engaging and interesting. So overall, very positive thoughts. Also, I had wisdom tooth surgery, so if you see this nasty bruise here, don't mind. So yeah. Anyway, gonna wrap up this vlog here. I'm sure at some point I will be reading some more books with Rich People Murder vibes, but these were the ones on my horizon for now. So I'll go ahead and wrap this vlog up and hopefully be able to get it up soon. So thank you so much for watching. If you've read any of these books, let me know your thoughts, or if you have more recommendations based on my thoughts of some of these books, then please do let me know. And I will link my Instagram down below. I will link more information about how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement. And as I said, please subscribe for more bookish content. And thank you again for watching. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.